All right, today we are going to be taking a look at stress and illness. Imagine being 21-year-old Ben Carpenter, who experienced the world's wildest and fastest wheelchair ride. As he crossed the street, the light changed and a semi truck started into the intersection. When they bumped, Ben's wheelchair handles got stuck into the truck's grill. The driver, who hadn't seen Ben and couldn't hear his cries for help, took him down the highway, pushing the wheelchair at 50 miles an hour until reaching its destination 2 miles away. Can you imagine what you felt like then? This is a reality. How did this happen? You think he was stressed? What is stress? Stress is the process by which we perceive and respond to certain events. Those events are what we call stressors, and we appraise as threatening or challenging. So let's look at the components of stress. You have the stressor, which is, in this case, Ben taking a ride on the truck. His stress reaction is his physical and emotional response, and stress is how he processes that. So, how do we appraise an event, any kind of stimuli or stressor, and how does that affect our stress reaction? Well, according to Richard Lazarus, stress arises from events themselves and how we appraise them, how we cognitively think about them. So, my question to you is, why do we worry about things that we can't control? That is stress appraisal. Events in our lives that flow through a psychological filter, and then we appraise an event that influences how much stress we experience and how effectively we respond. That is stress appraisal. So, is all anxiety good or bad? What does stress do? Well, we've talked about this with the sympathetic and parasympathetic system and how stress can mobilize our immune system for fending off, for example, infections or healing our wounds. We know that athletes, those who engage in activities, whatever they are, entertainers, musicians, whatever, thrive and excel when we are aroused. We know that stress builds up our resilience, but prolonged stress actually hurts us. It causes us to make risky decisions. We know that pregnant women who are stressed have shorter pregnancies. When we stress, people smoke and they drink. So, what are the main categories of stress? Catastrophes, significant life changes, just daily hassles. So, what is a catastrophe? When we think of catastrophes, we think of hurricanes, um, earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, all those catastrophic events. Significant life changes. Could be moving, it could be divorce, family breakups, any of those kind of significant changing jobs. And then you have your daily hassles of just relationship things, friend moving away, um, and so on. Many of these changes are what leads to hassle. What about daily homework assignments, daily hassles? going to work, etc. These are all things that cause stress. So, how does our body change as a result of the stress? So, as we look at how our body adapts, we go back looking at the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system of how our body reacts to for example, the fight or flight, the elevation of adrenaline, or the calming down what happens in our body. This is how our body responds to those stressors. All right, so let's take a look at the general adaptation syndrome and how do we come to understand the general adaptation syndrome. Okay, uh, this is like, as it says here, the burglar alarm. It sounds no matter who intrudes or what have you. This alarming to our body help us deal with the psychological aspect of stressors. It consists of three stages: when the stressor occurs, how we physiologically cope with that stressor, and then we exhaust, we're depleted, and we're just so tired from all that stress. This is the process or the stages of the general adaptation syndrome. So, what are some other ways in which we, as humans, deal with stress? Common after a loved one's death, we pull back, we conserve energy. If we have a disaster, a catastrophe, such as a ship sinking, some people become paralyzed. This is that fight or flight scenario. One of the things that happens here is a tend and befriend response. Typically, we find this among women facing stress. Women tend to look to find relationships. Men will tend to withdraw socially. And so the two ways in which generally we respond to stress, I think it's very important that we understand the differences of this between men and women. Um, Nurturing and so forth together. Women like to bond together during stressful events. Guys typically like to be alone and deal with it internally. So, how does it affect our vulnerability to diseases? We know that stress increases vulnerability to diseases. For example, surgical wounds heal more slowly when we're stressed. We're more likely to be sick and get colds and can speed up any disease that we're possibly dealing with. What are some factors that lead to heart disease? Stress. What is the stress that is on our heart? High blood pressure, family history, diseases, etc. How does smoking, obesity, and unhealthy diets and inactivity lead to heart disease? Stress is a major impact of that. It plays a big role. The psychological trauma people experience, the more their bodies generate inflammation, for example, associated with heart and health problems, including depression. So, as we look at stress, personality plays a significant role. Have you ever heard of type A and type B personalities and what they are? Let's take a look at type A personality. Reactive, competitive, hard driven people, very impatient, superly motivated. This is what we call type A personalities. climbing the mountain just because it's there kind of scenario. Type B personality is going to be more easygoing and relaxed. Um, not all that interested in that high drive and accomplishing things. Just kind of like easy flow, fly by the seat of your pants kind of a person. Type A is going to be very organized, very rigid, and so on. So, how does that affect our personalities? Well, we know that type A personalities are going to be more likely to have heart attacks, be more angry, uh, excess cholesterol and fat may continue to circulate in the blood, etc. Interesting stats on heart disease over a 10-year, people who are more pessimistic have higher rates of coronary disease. Those who are optimistic, less likely, and those in the middle. So this is a very good chart. What personality do you have? So our level of optimism is closely related to our mother's level of optimism. So how do we diffuse that anger? And catharsis is one way. It is a way in which we um, cleanse ourselves, for example, of the rage that we have. So how do we diffuse that anger? We have to have wait time. We need to find a distraction to help support ourselves, and we need to distance ourselves from what it is. We need time away, and this is the way that we diffuse our anger. And that will end our unit on stress and illness.